Okay, throughout this video, make sure you have a pen and paper to make notes. There are going to be formulas that you will need to write down. Listen again. The benefit of the video is obviously you can rewind and repeat bits. If you need to, make sure you do. Be prepared to pause. There are a lot of little activities I would like you to complete as we go, and make sure you do those activities. Learning comes from active participation, not passive listening. Okay, here is the starter for today's lesson. 4 questions. Pause it here, have a go. Don't give yourself any more than about 4 to 5 minutes max. Okay, answers for these. 6,000 meters, 60 minutes in an hour, not 100. Please remember that later on. The volume of a triangular prism, find the area of this front face. You do that by 4 times 5 dividing by 2 is 10. Times by this length, times by 9, 90. Centimeters cubed. This one, W is 42 over 6, which is 7. You can simplify that out. And the final one, the way I approach this, and there are lots of different ways you could do this, I wrote 2 ratios and then combined them to get 6 to 2 to 1. Then I wrote out my ratio with boxes. I know that these 4 extra boxes are worth 120 because it says there are more men than women. Each box must therefore be 30, and then if I add all those 30s up together, I get 270 people. Okay, we're going to be looking at compound measures today. Okay, so this will look, and we're going to specifically be looking at speed, distance, and time, how the 3 compare to each other. So here is your title, make sure you get that down, and today's date. Okay, so first things first, get that triangle written down because you're going to need it. Now, the way we use these triangles, if you're not familiar, these stand for speed, distance, and time. If I'm interested in finding out speed, I cover up the thing I'm interested in. So in this case, I'm going to cover up my finger, the S for speed. The distance is above the time, so I write it like here as a fraction, distance over time, or you can think of that as distance divided by time. It works the same. To work out the distance travelled, I'll cover up the distance with my finger, and the speed and time are next to each other, so we multiply. Just like you would in normal algebra, if you had 2 letters next to each other, you would multiply them together. Same here. Speed times time gives us our distance. And finally, the equation for time, we cover up the time, distance above speed, so distance over speed, or distance divided by speed. Please bear in mind, we'll come back to it on another lesson. The speed is the average speed. It is not technically going to be constant. It is an averaged out speed using this information. Okay. Here's a simple question just to begin with. If I drive 120 kilometers and it takes me 2 hours, how fast am I driving and what units should be used? Well, we know from our triangle that speed is distance divided by time. 120 kilometers divided by the 2 hours, 60, and it's kilometers per hour. And you'll notice kilometers per hour. Okay, and actually we say per, or show it as a forward slash, because it's a divide, okay, and the 2 do relate. You will typically find that in the question, it will give you the units you're interested in. Here are 4 questions, pause them, have a quick go, make sure you're happy with calculating these, and I have given you the formula. I would recommend you have that version written down as well at some point. Okay, the answers for these are shown here. I've shown them both in words and the shorthand. Notice that miles and meters are both lowercase m's, so they can be confusing. So sometimes for miles, if it's just miles, we'll use mi. Okay, I tend to just write out miles. Notice on the 2 imperial units, we have a p for per, as in miles per hour. On metric units, such as meters per second, we use a forward slash. It is just the standard way of writing that, okay? So, next, I run for 30 miles at a speed of 12 miles an hour. How long does this take me, and what units should I use? Well, we know, again from our triangle, that distance divided by speed will give us our time. 30 miles divided by 12 miles per hour gives us 2.5 hours. We know it's hours because it was miles per hour. Okay? Again, the units in the question will often give you the units for your answers. Okay? So here are 3 questions, just like before. Pause it now, have a go, and then unpause for the answers. Okay? You should have got 6 hours, 3 hours, and 40 seconds. The last one was meters per second. The others had an hour in them. Really watch out for that. And the final one here, like this, I run at 7 meters per second for 6 seconds. How far do I run and what units? Well, again, using our triangle, we know that distance is speed times time. 7 meters per second times 6 seconds, 42 meters. 3 questions, pause it, then unpause it for the answers. Okay. So we have 150 miles, 460 kilometers, and 180 miles. Straightforward on these ones. Okay, again, just the real common mistake is to do one of these calculations, and even though it says kilometers, out of habit, because we're used to miles per hour in the UK, a lot of people automatically just write miles per hour and miss that mark for the units. Please be very careful of that. Okay, so there's a worksheet now. It's split over 2 slides, so in a minute I will move on for you. On the first one, we want you to calculate the average speed using your speed, distance, time triangle. If you get a decimal, just put it into 1 decimal place, and you can just fill out this final table. If you only want to do, say, 4 of them instead of all 8, that's absolutely fine. Slide 2 is coming up. Okay, so here's slide 2. On this one, calculate the distance for 2A. 2B just asks you just to interpret those answers. And then 3, calculate the travel time. If it doesn't come out as whole hours, do it as hours in a decimal if needed. Okay. For example, 3.5 would be 3.5 hours. When I unpause it, you'll have the answers. Okay, answers for the first part, I rounded them all to 1 decimal place. Second part is up, and the third part at the bottom. I have given you it in both forms for these ones. On part B, aeroplane, because it's travelling at 230 kilometers an hour. That's very fast. A small plane would possibly also do A and C. I was thinking of like a large aeroplane. Go with the safest bet. Of the ones on there that's a dog running, well, 8 meters per second for 15 seconds, that's a short sprint. That's the sort of thing a dog might do. The final one, I went for a car or a lorry, but really anything that could travel at about 50 miles an hour and maintain it. An animal such as a cheetah, for example, can reach that sort of speed, but it would not be able to maintain it for the full 3 hours. So you do need to sort of bear that in mind on a question like this. Okay, so the first one, 484 miles an hour for 4 hours and 30 minutes. Well, what I've done for that, to calculate the distance, I've done the speed multiplied by the time, and I've used 4.5 instead of 4 hours 30. Okay, because 30 minutes is half an hour, so that's 4.5 hours. So 2,178 miles. When you have a look at these, if you get ridiculous answers, just double check it. A jumbo jet doesn't tend to fly for, say, 20 miles. Okay, so if you've got a smaller number than this, maybe just double check that, because you should have something in the thousands typically for a jumbo jet. The distance from Sunderland to Wigan is 150 miles. Molly leaves Sunderland at 7:50. Average speed is 60. what time does she arrive? Okay, so she's covered 150 miles and she did it at an average of 60. She will have obviously sometimes been slower than that, sometimes been faster, but that is her average speed, and we can use that with our speed, distance, time triangle. First, if we're going to find out when she arrives, we need to work out how long it takes. So I'm going to do 150 divided by 60 to get 2.5 hours, or 2 hours and 30. And actually 2 hours and 30 is a more useful way of thinking about this. She starts at 7:50. Okay, now I move forward 10 minutes to begin with, first of all, just to get me to the nice 8 o'clock mark. So I'm on the hour, it makes the math a little simpler. So I'm going to use 10 minutes to do that. Then I'm going to use my 2 hours to get me to 10 o'clock. And if I've used 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I had 2 hours and 30, I've got another 20 minutes travel. So altogether, I've got 10 minutes, 2 hours, and 20 minutes. That is my 2.5 hours, which means 20 past 10, she arrives in Wigan. Notice I used the 24-hour clock throughout there. There was nothing wrong with you writing AM after that. Just be very careful when travelling past the 12 and 24-hour points. And the final one. Okay, we know the journey that both of them are going to travel is 40 miles because it says so, but they are travelling at 2 different speeds. How much longer? It's a time question. Give your answer in minutes. We'll worry about that a bit later. First, Vicky is doing 40 miles at 60 miles an hour. So I'm going to do 40 divided by 60 to get the time. I can get that divide by using my triangle, and it gives me 2/3 of an hour. I'm going to leave it for now as a fraction because actually thirds of an hour come out as nice numbers. Charlie, however, 40 miles again, but this time travelling slowly. Okay, ever so slightly slowly. Now, what you need to bear in mind is take a moment and think about that. If Charlie is driving slower, he should take longer. So if he ends up being faster, double check your maths. His time, 40 divided by 50, gives me 4/5. Now these are both hours, okay, because we were dealing with miles per hour. So these are hours. 2/3 of 1 hour, or 60 minutes, is 40 minutes. 2/3 of 60 minutes is 40 minutes. 4/5 of 60 minutes is 48 minutes. The difference between the two, because that's what it wanted to know, is 8 minutes. One final question to have a go at now. Okay, the answers for this one. Well, first of all, let's look at Hannah because we're given the information for Hannah, so I'm going to just skip past Thomas for a moment. Hannah is travelling at 50 miles an hour. We're interested in who's driving fastest, so that's quite easy. Hannah's done 50 miles an hour. Now we need to find out Thomas's speed. Well, he's doing 12 miles and it takes 15 minutes. But we don't deal in miles per minute, we deal in miles per hour, as it states right there. Therefore, Thomas is travelling 12 miles at 1/4 of an hour, or put another way, 12 miles, 0.25 hours. Both of those are perfectly valid. Our speed, distance, time triangle tells us we're going to do our distance divided by our time. 12 divided by 0.25 will give you 48 miles per hour. He is driving ever so slightly slower than Hannah. Again, on a question like this, take a moment to double check that your answer makes sense. If you had done 12 miles divided by 15, you're going to get about 0.8 miles per hour. Less than 1 mile an hour on the motorway is far too slow. You're expecting an answer quite similar to this one because it's a comparison question, so they're normally going to come at least reasonably close. but certainly if you're getting single-digit mile an hour or triple-digit miles an hour, something has gone wrong. Make sure your answers make some sense. Okay, that's everything for today. Make sure that you submit your work to your teachers. Well done, and we will come back again for the second part of speed, distance, time.